Welcome to Global Entrepreneurship Week Thailand. My name is Theresa Blissing, and I am super excited to be moderating today's panel on women in entrepreneurship and why gender diversity matters in innovation. We planned this panel in partnership with Creative Business Network. They are working in the creative industries and are building communities for female entrepreneurs. So a really good cause. Please go and check them out. Helena from Creative Business Network promised to post a link into the chat. So keep an eye out for it. And she also got the support of some of their members. We have two of the Creative Business Network Creative Cup winners today on the panel. So yeah, let me introduce you to our amazing panelists. We have Beata Dobsha, founder and CEO of Travali app, coming in from Denmark today. Lina Sakai, founder and president of Ferment Station, turning in from Japan. These are the two Creative Cup winners. And I am super excited to also welcome Jamie Brennan, the Director of Commerce, Loyalty and Lifestyle Product for True Digital Group Thailand. Jamie, so great to have you on the panel as well and give us a bit of a perspective from a corporate perspective here. So yes, thank you so much, ladies, for joining us. I would say let's jump right in. If you could share with me, what does gender diversity mean to you, and why is it important? Maybe Beata, we can start with you.
Yeah, what does it mean to me? So it definitely means that there would be equal representation of men and women at the table, how they say it, in an organization. And why it is important, I can see from my experience that both men and women bring so much to the table, and their input is so valuable when it comes to solving problems. And I think it's often overlooked. And I just think that it's very, very important to have both approaches and both perspectives, and yeah, just to have both inputs when it comes to solving challenges.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Lina, what is your perspective here?
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Lina from joining from Japan. And quickly, let me introduce myself. I'm a founder and CEO of a startup and making organic alcohol for cosmetics. But I personally used to work for a really big Japanese bank, where you can easily imagine that most are like basically dominated by men. And then moved to a Deutsche Bank, a little bit better, but still like a man society. And then now I have my own organization or own company doing my business. So with all these experience of myself, having diversity, not just gender, but in any sense, being diverse means people having different background, different idea, different point of view, and that's really important for doing the business, and also having a good life. So that's my idea.
Okay, now I can imagine. I'm myself coming from the insurance industry, and
Wow.
finance is a very, very male-dominated, right? And then
Yes.
looking at a country like Japan, and that is something I would like to talk about as well, the differences between countries. But in my perception, Japan is in general very male-dominated, certainly probably more than the Scandinavian countries like Denmark, and then in the finance industry, in banking. Lena, kudos, that must have been a tough one. Jamie, you also work in a corporate setting for a big conglomerate, or part of a conglomerate. What is your experience?
Well, I would say my experience has overall been pretty interesting. So I'm very lucky that the portion of the conglomerate that I work for actually is fairly well balanced on almost all of the levels. There's a little less balance as we get higher up into the executive set. But one of the things that I think is so important about diversity is that as we talk about gender and diversity, we tend to look at this as men and women, but being in Thailand, there's actually 16 different identities that are recognized here by the state. And so there is a really important view of looking at diversity as how it can represent everyone. So there is, of course, gender, sexual orientation, but also one of the things that I find most interesting in my perception is how gender diversity and age can match. We talk a lot about the gender gaps for women when it comes to child rearing and home care, and the loss of the advantage of the woman as you hit this motherhood bracket. Now, I've had a pretty interesting motherhood bracket coming in as a stepmom, so I got my kids a little later in life. I didn't go through the whole process, but other women my age have maybe 5-6 years less experience than I do in the workforce, but they have significantly more experience outside. So they have this much larger perspective. And so that's what it means to me in a corporate setting, but also just in, to build on what Lena said, it's also about a happy life. We spend a lot of our time in offices and with our work colleagues. And one of the things that's so incredibly important to me is having a very different perspective across the group, having people that I can identify with, both as my gender identity, but also in my age set, while at the same time having a very ethnically diverse workforce. To me, this is what creates the balance, especially in digital, that lets us move forward. Being from a digital company, we have this democratization of access to technology, and it gives us the ability to reach anyone and everyone. And so that to build on what Beata said, that's also why everyone needs a seat at the table, right? Because if we don't have everyone with a seat at the table, our products will fail because we've missed a core user group. So it's not just about, oh, this is a nice to have. It's literally the imperative for making sure that we can be successful in the future. So that's my personal perspective.
Thank you so much, Jamie, and I agree. If you look at women in the economy, who often have, a lot of the purchasing decisions are made by women, and if they are not on the table when it comes to product development, that is a problem. And if we are talking about innovation, it is crucial to have this diversity. Beata, maybe you want to jump in here. I know you created a travel app for females. So what was the thinking behind that?
Yes, so I kind of skipped over my introduction, but just to go backwards a little bit, I have an app called Travaly, and it is for women so that they can travel together. Not only that they can travel together, we're actually working on a version that would enable women to travel, because it's so important that we have equal opportunities when it comes to traveling as well. Traveling can give so much to a person. I could talk a lot about it. I won't right now, but really the aim of the company, or like our goal, is to create a world where all women can travel safely and freely. And yeah, that's what we're doing, and I just think it's so important.
Yeah, and I think exactly, it's designing these products from a female lens, and that is something that is often missing if we are looking at data, which is highly skewed to towards a male perspective, towards default male view, and in so many cases it was proven that considering a female perspective, products, could look quite differently. Coming back a little bit on, being a woman in entrepreneurship or leadership in your industry. Lena, maybe you can answer that. Working in Japan, being an entrepreneur, coming from a banking background, how do you feel? Is it for women living in Japan and working in your industry?
Thank you. Moving from a traditional Japanese bank to my own startup, things really changed. It's much, much, much better. That's for sure. I hope that nobody is listening, in Japan, like especially in the finance people. But people still talk.
They should listen.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, they should listen to me. Yeah, that's true. But when I was in bank, I started my career pretty long time ago, but it was 230 new grad, and there were only 5 women. So you can easily imagine that things had been really tough because the work that we can do, sometimes we may not be able to carry a heavy stuff, but just they think, we, in our team, we have women and that's a fail, that kind of thing is always happening. And of course, they don't expect us, get married or we may have children, but they keep saying that, women quit so easily. So there's no use educating them, that kind of thing or happening. And I'm pretty sure that things got much better because I'm talking about the situation 15, 20 years ago. But still, I still keep hearing the similar thing in the traditional Japanese bank and finance industry. So compare from that, the world that I'm in, the startup, it's much better because I can make decisions. But still, it's a boys' club, we are a startup, so we need to do the funding and we need to talk to the investors. We have to give pitches, and sometimes there's like a big event, but looking at the event, like 90% boys, guys, and they know each other, like they're friends. They go out, have beer all the time. So the jargons and the terms that they use might be a bit different. So I still have the awkward feeling, that I'm not like one of them. But still, we are, there are good news, like the few accounting firms or the some governments are trying to support more women, like supporting entrepreneurs, women, and we have like this organization or gathering, and now we have like our club so that we can always share our opinions, the comments that we keep hearing from investors and stuff. So things are much getting better, but still I think it's tough.
Yeah. Now it reminds me a lot. So I run a podcast focused on the insurance space and startups working in the insurance space in Asia. And we talked to a lady from Korea, and she started her own company. It was the first insurtech in South Korea. And when she was out trying to get funding, she was pregnant. And so many people told her, like, it's impossible being a woman and being pregnant, you cannot do it. You are a risk. We consider you a risk, right? Not only being a woman, but also pregnant, the founder of the company. But she managed it, and she finally found a company that would give her funding and running very successful the startup. And as I mentioned, the first in this like very male dominated space. So that is I think a great example of how difficult it is for women, but at the same time, how women are playing a crucial role in innovation and developing new products and getting the industry to the next level. Jamie, I know you also work on like the digital products, digital space. What is your experience? What value are bringing women to the table, and what are the difficulties they experience?
Well, there's a lot, but actually I'd like to really quickly build on this, because one of the things that we did at True Digital Group is we actually worked with the UN Environment Program on a program called Grow Green Girl, which was focused on teaching women how to pitch in financial industries for funding. And one of the things, so I've actually, through the course of many jobs, worked with the UN Environment Program on their startup incubation process. I've done mixed gender classes, all male classes, and of course, this most recent one, which was all women. And you get added into these chat groups. And what was the most amazing to me is that out of all of the groups, the ones that were the most supportive at connecting each other to outside opportunities was the women's group. Also, what I found to be so even more interesting than that is, like, first of all, they're actually out to help each other because everybody's trying to get started up. Second of all, the diversity of their products was significantly higher. So we had people that were in the manufacturing arena. We had people that were working on, all of this is around sustainability, but so on cup check-in, check-out in Vietnam. We had people that were working on how to monetize electric vehicles, very interesting stuff. Almost all of them were bootstrapping their startup. One of the biggest differences that I think creates a logical fallacy in the minds of people investing is that women are a risk. They're a risk because they might get pregnant, they might have a family, they might have other priorities. But the reality is that women are, by and large, much more of a network connector. We have women who are bootstrapping their own startups that have the ability to prove their success before they're seeking funding. In actuality, the majority of women who bootstrap their own systems actually end up progressing much further, much more quickly. We don't see it in the news that often because most of them don't go to IPO because they keep the profits for themselves and reinvest in their own community. So I think one of the things about funding is that we have to start as an industry at large, because True Group also has InCube, which is an investment firm specifically looking at startups. As a community, we have to start looking at what do we naturally determine as a risk, and is that risk actually a value? And that's what brings having more diversity at the table to be so important. Because if you don't have someone that says, look at their original round of funding, their seed money didn't come from some angel investor, their seed money literally came from every person in their community, they're going to be more likely to succeed because they already have the community behind them. So, sorry, just needed to build on that because I think it is so important when we talk about finance. Yeah. And also I believe it's the Asia Development Bank says that in Southeast Asia, 58% of women are actually unbanked. So we never see their successes. We never see how they're able to build up credit. And it's largely in countries where they're required to have a male co-signer. So there are all of these additional barriers, and yet women still succeed. And they succeed because they're naturally these connectors, because they are the head of the family. They're the one.
And I think I also saw, sorry to interrupt you here, Jamie, but I also have a study which actually conducted a friend of mine here in Germany in analyzing if women are more risk averse. And she came to the conclusion, yes, they are. So if you have a female leader, they are more likely to succeed because they are 150% sure that their business model works, because, you know, naturally women seem to be more risk averse. So if they say, okay, I want to do this, I want to risk starting my own business, there seems to be a higher rate of succession. And what you mentioned just now, you know, collecting money from the community, you have to be really sure when you are gambling in a way with money from your fans, friends and family, compared to, you know, you got some easy money from a VC, right? That you can gamble with. If you lose it, yes, you know, not that great, but it's a difference if you are collecting money from fans and family. So yeah, that was just what I wanted to add here.
It's absolutely true. And then one of the things that I think people often overlook is that there's an automatically built-in distribution channel. When we look at startups and innovation in general, one of the most overlooked things is what is the actual distribution channel. It's like, I know my idea is good. I know I'm solving a real problem. I know that I've sorted out my TAN, SAM, SOM. I know what I'm going to do for my market sizing. but people so often overlook, how do you acquire your first user? How are you going to grow that distribution? And I mean, obviously coming from digital, and I think Beata probably has some wonderful insights into this, having specifically an application, you have to think which channels are cost effective. And if you have a free channel that is your community that has invested into your product, you've already hit the largest hurdle of the first adopters. But that's, I mean, my perspective. I'd love to hear from Beata how she got her first users as well.
Yeah, Beata.
So our first few hundred users were totally organic, and I couldn't be happier for that. Actually, it was just me going to, well, of course we have social media, but we had no budget. It was just me going to different events and pitching it to people, and they were like, the greatest experience was that women afterwards came and surrounded me, and they said that it's such a great idea and we really want to be part of it, and we know 10 or 12 or how many other women who should be part of it. And it was just such a strong we're building such a strong community, as you said, and it's just growing organic. So yeah, yes.
And what is your experience from like a funding perspective? Do you have some insights how it is in Denmark? Like my experience is mostly in the Asian market, and I can say it's difficult for women to get funding. Now, Scandinavia is more of a feminine country and society. So I wonder, do you think it is any easier in the Nordics compared to other countries, or what is your experience? Still hard?
Good question. I actually looked up if there's some kind of gender equality index of the countries, and I found some kind of numbers regarding Europe, and I found that Denmark is doing the second best, Sweden is the best here in Europe, and Hungary, where I'm from, is doing the second worst. No surprises there. But Denmark has lots of initiatives when it comes to funding. There are events for female founders and competitions and whatnot. But still, I saw this report that said that only 1 or 2% of all the money VC funding goes to female founders. And that's not only, the report was based on the States, but then they redid it over here in Europe, including Scandinavia, and the numbers were not so much better. So it's still a problem. And well, I mean, my company did get 30 something thousand euros because no one told me that it's hard for women, but I can believe that we face some challenges, and in the report there were some certain things outlined that VCs and investors in general tend to ask different questions from women. It's actually a very interesting discussion, in my opinion, how they, if they see a man, they would rather ask questions that would set the person up for success, like, how are you going to acquire your customers? What's your vision for this? And then when it's a woman, it's rather how you're going to retain your customers. How can you make sure that you can keep the market share and whatnot? So, yeah.
And there was actually a study that women are more judged on their like past performance, whereas men are often judged on their potential, which maybe adds to your experience of or what you heard, that you receive different questions if you're a female founder compared to a male founder. We have now all the time be talking about gender diversity, but is there any difference to gender equality and inclusions? What are your thoughts on that one? Lena, Jamie, who wants to start?
Sure. Okay. So I think that one of the things that makes it so interesting to be involved as a woman is I've always been in male dominated fields, similar to as Lena said about finance. I've always been in technology. Needless to say, that's slightly male dominated. But one of the things that I have found that has changed over the years, I think, about inclusion is when I was first starting, I needed to take a very self-deprecating tone. That, oh, if you don't mind, or if maybe I don't understand, when in actuality I knew darn well I was right. Having been in some of my fields for over 10 years, I tend to know when I'm right, and I also tend to know when I'm wrong, which is something that when we're getting a seat at the table, it's not as easy to admit. Once you reach a certain level as a female innovator, you can't say that you don't know, and you also can't say that you do. You have to walk such a fine line to make sure that you keep your seat at the table. I think what Beata said was very true. It's like the question is always, how will you stay here? It's not how did you get here? It's not what will you do more? It's how will you stay? And I have to say, one of the things that I really respect about the current organization that I'm at is it's never a question of will I have the seat at the table. I am always there. That question doesn't exist, but it's how can I get more people at that table? Because at a certain level in every organization, even the most innovative ones, there are only so many seats. So how do you make a longer table instead of building a higher wall? And I think this is one of the key questions that we actually have to ask the men in our groups. I, as a woman, will grow the talent under me, and actually my team at True Digital is almost all women, which is quite wonderful to say in a product organization. That we actually have enough women that my team of 9 is almost all female, with the exception of one really stellar man. But we have to ask the men around us is, what are you doing to increase this inclusion? Because this is not a woman's problem. This is an organizational problem. This is a situation where we can't succeed without this inclusion. And people need to be reminded. Where I come from, I'm originally from the United States. I grew up in a very privileged place. I never thought that there would ever be a way in which I would be excluded. And so when I moved into the corporate world, it was very interesting for me to be excluded for the first time. And it made me realize that it was my job to bring more people in. I think when you hit the executive level, you are dealing with a lot of people from all genders who have maybe never been excluded. And you have to have that conversation of how do you make sure that people from a different background than you, or as the same background from you, get a chance to speak. It's not just being sat at the table, it's the ability to be heard. And I think that for me is one of the most important things about the inclusion, is to make sure everyone gets heard. And with that note, I'd like to actually turn things over to Lena, because I've been talking for quite a while.
Lena, what was your experience? Do you feel heard today? Do you felt heard when you were working in the banking corporate environment?
Yes. Well, thinking of, though I was talking a lot of bad thing about the Japanese banks, but still, I think I was lucky because I was one of the only 5 out of 230. So my voice was always heard. I think it was not fair that there were only 5 out of 230. It's ridiculous. They should choose like 100 women, 100 men. But in my case, because I was a minority, I was being watched, but at the same time being evaluated and also being educated pretty well. And I was given a lot of chance. So it was good and bad. But as Jamie was talking about, I think it's really important that everybody knows that everybody is being heard. Being in Japan, there are many women who I'm sure have the potential to be promoted, but because they're so used to not being heard, they don't even talk and they don't even think that they can do it. And it was, I keep looking at the similar thing all the time. But when I was in a bank, I was like, I can do this. I can do this. Let me give me more opportunity. But then I moved to a startup industry. I think I was really shy in the first place. Most men, if it was in my position, I'm sure they will go like, oh, I'm gonna go IPO in 3 years time or 5 years time, because guys tend to be, they can talk big, right? But I'm like, yeah, I want to do this, but I may not be able to do that. And also, I've never seen a woman, in my group, saying that we want to go IPO, or that kind of people is not in our society. So I never thought that I might be able to do that. But I had a chance to be, in the women group, and I met a few friends saying like, oh, you can do it, I can do this. And I'm getting ready for it, to grow or scale my company. And then finally I felt that, oh, I might be able to do that. So it's really important that you're being heard and also being evaluated and think that you can do it.
Yeah, what I wonder now, because you mentioned that men often have they behave differently, they are louder, they're more in your face, right, where women are not acting like that. The question I have is now, should women be more behaving like men to be heard, or is the solution that we maybe change the perception of men, or help them to understand where women are coming from, and give them a voice, and have them be heard? Because we talked about this before. Women are adding so much to a business, are helping to innovate and benefit of the company. So what's the solution here? How should women behave? Should they be more like men, or is it that we have to train the men in the workforce to be more sensitive for female leaders?
Oh, I have a lot of
I don't think we want to be like men. And at the same time, looking at the younger people, the younger men are different from like older men, right? So I see diversity here. So I don't think we need to be like men, like old men.
That was actually exactly one of my key points, is that, obviously this panel is about gender, which is incredibly important and such a key aspect of so many of the problems that we face as organizations and as startups and in innovation. But one of the things that's so important also is that we look at the differences that are more than just gender, because my children joke a lot that it's like, oh, you're not really a woman. It's like, you're a white male executive. That's what you are, because I'm loud and I am forceful and I am specific at this point in my career. I have that opportunity. I've proven myself enough times that now I can say, no, I'm right. This is what it is. Here is my vision for the next 5 years, and people will listen to that vision. But I also believe that that's because I got beaten down so hard so many times that I just decided that it didn't matter anymore. It's like, if I'm going to get yelled at either way, I might as well get yelled at for the thing that I like really believe in, for this thing that I'm going to push. And I see this a lot in so many of the founders that I'm working with that are under the age of 30. And it's hard for me to say that as someone in their mid 30s, to say like, yes, the younger generation, the really up and comers, they are so much more giving towards each other in conversations. They're so much more collaborative in these workshops. And then we see this older group of people that, I'm obviously in a bit of an older industry, as True Digital is part of True, which is a large telco. But we see these things slowly changing. And I think one of the things that can be so beneficial is that people of all ages, no matter what your gender or your identity, feel that they can pull a Kamala Harris and they can say, I'm sorry, I'm speaking. Everyone should have that within themselves, because we can't retrain everyone. The only thing in your life that you can control is how you react to it. There are so many obstacles to all of us for our innovation and our success, and I really just have so much respect for Lena and Beata for getting something up and running on their own. It's incredible. But there are so many obstacles for all of us. It's like we have to pull this. It's not what can everyone else do for us, but how can I make sure that they know that I will do this for myself? And that's how I have worked in aggressive work.
Okay, I think here also plays in the cultural differences, right? So Jamie, you're from the US, and it is just a fact. There is a cultural difference between you coming from America and Lena coming from Japan. I would like to hear the opinion of Denmark and Hungary. Beata, what's your viewpoint?
Yeah, Denmark and Hungary. In what context again? Sorry.
No, when it comes to should women be behaving like men to be successful, right? So we are seeing men often more successful in receiving funding, in climbing the corporate ladder. So the question is, should women be more like men in that perspective, or do we have to create awareness basically to make women be heard in society, in the workspace, etc. What do you think is the best way from your perspective?
Yeah, I think I have been thinking a lot about that, and I also talk to many women about it. And normally they say, and I also agree, that we shouldn't be like men, but we should, I think, be aware of the differences between men and women. Also when it comes to like getting the funding, but just in general. Once I attended this competition, and the lady called Ingrid was speaking, and she said that there are, of course, many differences between men and women, but one of them she highlighted was if there's a list for men before they do something that they have to check off. They only have to check off between, I think she said, 30 and 60%, and they're good to go. If the same list exists for women, we have to check off 100%. And I think that was such a huge realization for me, because I just had to put that in my head that I don't have to like get 100%. I can also be, in that case, I think it's good to be like a man, to do things before we feel ready. Especially if you want to start a company, you have to do a lot of things before you feel ready. Pretty much everything you do before you feel ready. But in general, I think it's us knowing the differences and also educating basically everyone of what we can do, female founders, but just women in general, how valuable we are, because I truly believe that it should be the basic. It should be the basic that men are valuable, women are very valuable when it comes to anything.
Yeah. So how do you all think could men be allies for women to help them succeed and to frankly create a better future for all of us, a more successful, more innovative future? You have any thoughts on that? What would you wish that men would do to help support female entrepreneurship and female leaders?
I'll jump in. Always ready to answer the question first. So I think the number one thing that goes back for me is to the being heard. Early on in my career, and actually, I started a company a long time ago, and one of the things that was so helpful is when I would get interrupted in meetings, someone in the meeting would bring it back to me. I would have this one man that I worked with who was very high up in the company, and he was so great. And he would say, "I'm so sorry, Jamie, I think you were interrupted. Would you like to pick back up?" Because interrupting people changes the momentum of the conversation. And this is something that you can do not just for women, not just for founders, but also for people who are introverted, who have more of a slow to speak, people who are speaking in a second language. These are things on how to be such an incredible ally. And then the other one that I would really, really push for is looking at how you can contribute to building a longer table. That's in finance, in inviting people to the table, and in also opening your own perspective to say, is what I assume right now because of my personal lived experiences, or is this a problem that I may not have known that existed? Just taking that 5 seconds and asking yourself, is this my perspective or is this fact, can change every conversation. But that's my perspective on how people can be allies for basically anything, actually. That's how to be an ally.
Thank you. Couldn't agree more. Lena, you have any thoughts on that, or what really helped you, get started as a female entrepreneur?
Get support at home. I have a great family, husband, always being supportive, doing like family, I don't go duties, but, making breakfast and dinner. And actually he's making, getting ready for my lunch for my boy tomorrow morning. It's night in Japan. So, but it as Jamie mentioned it, it's really important we get support in really every aspect. And when we talk about like maybe today also, we keep talking just among women, but men should also take part in. And we keep hearing and talking that female entrepreneurs have sometimes difficult times because we get married, we may have children, and we get pregnant, that kind of stuff. But except for giving birth to babies, all other things can be shared, right? So it's not just us, but it's like men, women, and kids and family, and everybody can handle that. So I think it's really important that men also think that it's their issue, not just our issue.
Mm. Yeah, and you mentioned something like my husband said to me, you are having a panel on gender diversity and it's only women. So, and he's definitely a feminist and advocating for women's rights and inclusion and gender diversity. One of my last questions for today, do you think being a female leader and starting a company as a female entrepreneur is an act of feminism, or how would you define that one? Beata, maybe we start with you.
I'm usually very careful with the word feminism because I feel like it got a little bit of a negative feeling attached to it. I wouldn't say it's an act of feminism then. I would actually say it's a must because we really need to, just like how men problems are being solved, we also really need to solve women's problem. And that's my company is about, and that's a lot of companies run by women, also men, but women mostly about. I think it's just very important that we achieve equality there. And yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. Like the word feminism has such a negative touch, right? Which I think is not always justified, but I really like your answer here that you're saying, okay, there are products that women need and just no man was ever thinking about building them. So, we are building them ourselves, not just to be a feminist, but to have a successful business, because these are products that people want and that people will buy. And it's more about really creating a successful business. Jamie, what's your opinion?
Well, actually, I love what Beata said. So your product is geared towards women, but once you take, because I believe in you, right? You're going to conquest all of the women in the marketplace. You're going to take over 100% of market share. But a lot of the problems that you're solving are actually cross-applicable over time. So women, we want to travel in groups. We want to go to places where things may be less safe, but that applies to people who have different sexual identities. It applies to people who, quite frankly, also smaller individuals. I found out from one of my colleagues who's actually male and he's quite small, that there are parts of my neighborhood that he won't go out into late at night because he's worried about getting picked on. And I think that when we start with a female-focused lens, it's seen as an act of feminism. It's seen as like, oh, we're pushing the female agenda. But really, as Beata said, is like we're pushing an agenda to solve problems. And then those problems can be more widely applicable. One of the ones that I always think about is razors, right? Like when you developed the razor, everybody's got hair. Yeah, everybody's taken it off some way or another, but it was originally developed for men, right? It's like we have all of those famous ads, and then they're like, well, we'll just make it pink, and then it's for women. But how many years was that? 30 years of disposable razors that were made pink?
Yeah.
But in reality, there could have been such good innovation that came much later. So men got tired of nicking their Adam's apple, so they developed a razor that swerved. Well, do you know how long I was nicking my ankles for before somebody developed a razor for men? I've been using men's razors my entire life because they're
Tell me about it. I still use them sometimes today because they are cheaper.
They're cheaper and
Good idea. I should do that.
Yeah, they're just better designed. Like the women's razors, they're like, oh, it's 2 blades, we're going to put lotion around it. It's like, no, I buy better lotion than comes on my razor. But this is one of the key areas, is that they look to solve a gendered problem, but in actuality, it was much more widely applicable. And I think we can take the same lens, is why as women is this solving a feminine problem? I mean, aside from potentially like, birth control products and feminine care products, everything that is designed for a woman has another applicable purpose. So why would we say that this has to be feminism? This is just being a strong leader in a society that has not fully accepted women as strong leaders yet.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Lena, you have something to add here.
Well, what I just heard from Jamie was so much fun. I almost forgot what I wanted to say, but but for me, being entrepreneur and doing my own business doesn't really have much to do with gender or stuff. It's just the act of what I wanted to do. But I think everybody, whether it's women, men, or a different, gender, everybody should have the right and the power to say that we want to do that.
Yeah. No, I couldn't have said it better. And I think that's a great way to end this panel, that we should have the right to do that. If we choose to be a mother and stay at home, then that's okay. If we decide to start our own company, to work in a corporate, or if we decide to do everything at once, right? It should be a choice, and it should be possible for women to succeed. And I hope in the future it will become easier, because as I mentioned, and what was clear in this panel, it benefits society, it creates better products, it creates innovation, and will bring a society as a whole forward, not only for women, but also other groups in society. So yeah, thank you so much for your time today. I highly enjoyed this panel. Thank you for staying up late, Lena. I know in Japan it's quite late already. And yeah, Jamie, thank you so much for joining. Beata, thank you.